Hello, this is Conan Horrors here with another episode of Planet Quest, and here you can see a copy of the Moonsat. Now this is launching and heading off to Minimus, which is the second moon of Kerbin, and it's on about a 6, maybe 7 degree incline to the rotation of Kerbin. Now, in my last video, there was a little bit of confusion about Delta V and fuel and all that. I kind of want to address that confusion. I got some comments and I listened to the video, watched it, and if I'm going to address the confusion, then I need to know exactly why it's confusing. And I'm totally convinced. I make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. I totally make mistakes with my speech, especially while playing a video game. It's not that great. Anyway, so I was listening to that, and I was surprised that I never actually confused Delta V with anything. But I can understand where the confusion might come from, and that is that Delta V can be used is used to express the change in velocity of a ship. But when you're talking about your Delta V remaining, that's talking about the potential Delta V remaining in the fuel. So I think that's where the confusion was coming from. There was no real confusion in my speech. But anyway, here we are coming down onto Minimus, and on this side I have a connection to a communication connection to mission control. But on the other side of Minimus, the light side, where I want to land because it's better for you guys if I land on that side, does not have any connection. So I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to land and where I'm going to land and setting up nodes. Now what I could have done is just stayed parked in orbit and waited until the bright side was also on the same side that I had communication. But I was not feeling it. Anyway, I did get some science from this before getting onto the dark side, so to speak. I transmitted some science. Anyway, it's time for old me to take over and launch a new ship. Here's Jebediah Kerman in the Vector Mark I. He is headed toward Minimus even after the ill-fated attempt for a landing with a probe. But no, he's confident that he'll be able to land because he doesn't need any communications to mission control while on his mission. No, that's just for the weak-willed and the robots. Anyway, Jebediah Kerman he's a little bit worried, a little bit concerned, and I don't blame him. I don't exactly have the best track record for things going wrong in space. And this is completely untested hardware. We're going to Minimus. This is the first landing on another body in this series. If I was Jebediah Kerman, I'd be pretty concerned as well. The first, the Apollo 11 mission had a lot of its own setbacks. Nothing like Apollo 13, but Apollo 11 had quite a few setbacks, one of which they solved with a pen, of all things, a felt-tipped marker that they used to help with to be able to get off the moon, essentially. So what had happened is, while they were climbing back into the capsule and getting ready to rest before taking off and making a rendezvous with their friend in orbit, they accidentally knocked off a oh shoot, I forget what it's called, a breaker, I think. They actually knocked off a breaker that's responsible for igniting the engine so that they could get off of the surface of the moon. But they quickly realized that they could replace it with a felt-tipped marker. So I don't know that I'll have that same ingenuity, but we can try. Anyway, I'm going to skip the rest of this launch, just because launches are boring. And I'll meet you when we get into orbit. Alright, well, here's Jebediah in orbit, and the unfortunate thing is that he's already used up most of his fuel in what was supposed to be the rendezvous stage. Luckily, the maneuvering, the orbit capture and descent stage has a lot of fuel. So much fuel, in fact, that I have over 2,000 meters per second of delta V in that stage. So I think it would be alright if I used that primarily for getting to Minimus. So I'm going to set up my maneuver, which I think will be about here. Yeah, I could just start aiming at Minimus right now and be totally fine. There it is, right on the current vector. So I'm going to just aim for it or aim right at it and start the engine and see if we get an encounter. This isn't exactly rocket science, but it should get me there. And for those of you who really have good vision and have HD screens like I do, that's Minimus right there. That dot that looks like a star, that is Minimus. So, yeah, maybe setting up a maneuver node is a little bit of a better idea, but I'm pretty confident that we'll get an encounter. Anyway, time for the use of this major engine, and I'm just going to be watching the apoapsis rise, make sure an encounter is reached. One thing that you might notice about the Vector Mark 1 is that it has only one crew cabin. There is no other separatable cabin for landing. And you're right. That is not a design flaw, but it's a feature, we'll call it. Yes, those of you who know about the moon landings, we had a separatable landing unit. And the reason for doing that is taking all the fuel necessary to land everybody on the moon, and then have all that fuel necessary to get back to Earth to be carried up off of the moon as well, would just require way too much delta V, way too much fuel. And so they decided to have it break apart. They can have the main fuel that gets them back to Earth in orbit around the moon. That way they don't have to worry about getting all that fuel down onto the moon and then back up into orbit around the moon. It's just already there. That's why only two astronauts, actually landed on the moon. The third one was left in orbit, manning the station, as it were. Anyway, this apoapsis, I might actually want to change my approach attitude a little bit. Yeah, I'm not too convinced at this point anymore that I'm going to get a really good encounter. In fact, I'm going to aim down a bit, just really change this angle of attack without changing my relative inclination too much. No, actually it's getting better, so that's good. I want a good relative inclination. And as you can see, that's indicating where my ascending node and descending nodes are. And they're coming more and more into line with the apoapsis, which is a very good thing. That's what I want, because that means that I'll hit Minimus right at the apoapsis. Anyway, we have a moon encounter that went away quickly, but we might start seeing it on the descending side. No, keep going. Keep going. Almost there. Almost there. And there. So we have a Minimus encounter followed by a moon encounter. How interesting. Anyway, I'm just going to warp until we get into the sphere of influence of Minimus, and then figure out how we're going to land from there. Ah, yes, Minimus no longer looks like speck in the night sky, you can now see that it has form and shape, that it is in fact a solid object that we are plummeting toward. But while we think about our plummet, another good thing to do is capture some science. Now, on this... Uh-oh. Did I forget a thermometer? You can't take Minimus's temperature without a thermometer. Oh dear. Oh well. It's a good time to observe the mystery goo and to get a look at the materials bay. So this is the study while high over Minimus, capture all of that. And even from that, we're going to be getting plenty of science. Probably be able to open up another node in the science tree. Anyway, come and capture that and put it back in the capsule. Collect data. And collect data. And for those of you wondering at home, oh yes, this is exactly accurate, you see. In the real world, science actually has science points associated with it, and scientists use those science points to unlock nodes in their science trees. It's really quite interesting. That's why we can tell what's going to be happening in the future with technology, because we can see ahead in that science tree and make our predictions from that. Well, not necessarily predictions, but read from it. Nah, I'm just kidding. Yeah, for a video game, you have to make science gathering work somehow, and of course, to make it numeric is the easiest way to represent the gain of science. Anyway, I'm going to line up my maneuver node for the maneuver that I just set up, and then warp and fire. And you'll see that I'm bringing my periapsis really low down to the surface of Minimus. And the reason for doing that is to take as much advantage of the Oberth effect as I possibly can. I want to be able to save as much fuel as I possibly can when I try to circularize. Although my periapsis is on the dark side of Minimus, I'm going to try to land on the light side again. And of course, this time I don't have to worry about pesky communications, so it should be fine. Landing shouldn't be as difficult since I'm able to control everything in real time. Anyway, periapsis is at 22 kilometers, 20 kilometers. Bring it down a little bit more. 15 kilometers, great. And I'm just barely tapping the button to raise my throttle. These engines in Kerbal Space Program have very throttleable. That is a very difficult word. Yes, the engines in Kerbal Space Program are very throttleable. Way more so than the engines in real life. In real life, the engines are basically on or off. There's no real throttling, which makes maneuvers a lot more difficult. You really have to plan in advance what you're going to do, and you need to be able to shut it off very quickly, and you need to be very precise because there's no minutia changes. Anyway, my periapsis is at negative 24, which means I'm going to be hitting the ground. Oh, I slowed down way too much. I got busy talking about engines and forgot to actually look at my periapsis. So let's bring it up again, and just enough to land here, I guess, would be fine. I don't need to be all the way on the bright side of Minimus, but close enough. Okay, anyway, I'm going to always point toward retrograde relative to the surface and see if we can make this landing happen. There's the sun. Hello, sun. Now, with the real moon landings, they did actually try to land in a space kind of like this, where you have the sun all the way on one side. That way you have, like you see here, very contrasting boulders. You can see all the minute details of the surface. This was so that it would be harder to land on a place that would be dangerous. It would be easier to see safe places to land. Now, of course, they did have the place that they wanted to land picked out already, but and so you could argue that it didn't necessarily need that. But if you actually look at the landing problems that they had with the Apollo missions, for example, the Apollo 11, going back to that, when they were landing, the computer was fully autonomous as they were landing, and Buzz Aldrin realized that they were going to smash into, or not smash into, but they're going to land on a whole bunch of boulders, which means that they would have tipped over and everything. And they noticed this because the landmarks that they were passing, they knew they were going to pass, but they were passing it 1 second earlier than they should have. And it takes quite the eagle eye to notice that you're 1 second ahead of time on your landmarks. So yeah, they did the calculations and realized that they were going to be landing on boulders, and that would have caused some serious problems. So Buzz Aldrin took over into semi-automatic control. This means that the ship or the computer was taking care of the engine and whether or not it was throttled or not, or on, essentially. And Buzz Aldrin was doing the maneuvering of the thruster so that they could land in their predetermined spot and not on boulders. Anyway, in Kerbal Space Program, the boulders don't actually have collision boxes, which means we don't need to worry about landing on those. We can land inside one if we wanted to. Something that I would really like if they updated. I would like for the boulders to have collision boxes so that if I land on one, it is still dangerous. Though on Minimus, the gravity is so weak that landing on a boulder isn't really a serious problem at all. Anyway, as I had predicted, I have plenty of fuel remaining in this descent stage. I'm really quite pleased with how much I have remaining. Maybe even enough to hit another biome on Minimus. But maybe not. We'll see. Anyway, landing slowly, carefully. Oh, there we go. That was a bit of a hard landing, but a landing nonetheless. One that you can walk away from. I hope that didn't damage any of my landing gear. That would be really annoying. Anyway, while we're here, time to do some science. Observe the mystery goo. Oh, I forgot to get crew reports while in orbit. Anyway, we'll do a crew report here. And then EVA. Do an EVA report. There we go. Keep that data. Take and store. Then Jebediah will be the first Kerbal on another world. Here he comes. Ready to step foot. He must say something very interesting. Though it doesn't really matter, does it, since he doesn't have any communication with base. They basically don't know if he's landed yet or not. He should have by the launch profile, but they don't know. Anyway, he's going to plant his flag. Something really cool. I don't know. What's something cool that we can say about landing on Minimus? I know. First, exclamation mark. No, not on the YouTube comments. On Minimus. Okay. So now he's going to take his surface sample and EVA report and gather all of this open Science Bay stuff. Here we go. Oh, he can't take that. The science has already been gathered from it, huh? Well, that's annoying and inconvenient. Here we go. Try to land on this landing strut. Nope, that did not work. Anyway, collect data, remove it, and collect this data. Sweet. Now he's going to come over here and collect all the data from over here. And yeah, we have a whole nother set of material bays and mystery goos. Okay, he should have everything, right? Yes, okay. Good, yeah, so we have this one extra materials bay and one extra mystery goo. Maybe, just perhaps, since we have plenty of fuel remaining, we can go land on a different biome and collect even more science with this one mission. But if we do, that's something for another episode. Until then, I'm Conan Horus. Have fun.